Where's Ivan?
Right up here, sir. Right in front of you.
Yeah.
Over there.
Oh, okay. It's tough up
By
here.
the light.
Okay, so here's kind of like I'd like to do this if you guys are okay. And I know that there's some people out there. I know Robin Gritz is out there somewhere. If you know, and I know her parent. Yeah, I see you there. There you go. Make sure we get a big hug tonight, huh? Because former FBI agent, somebody who I worked with in Iraq, actually, going after terrorists, and she went through something, and she still is going through something. She's sitting here in the audience tonight with her parents. She's going through something that in a different way, but former FBI agent, and they are just going a whistleblower and basically did a lot of great things as an agent in the FBI, and they have basically tried to destroy her life. And so we're dealing with such severe corruption in our government, and so that's kind of, you know, this story was really important to put together, to tell everybody, to tell the world, certainly to tell the American people, and it was really the first, I was really the first target of the previous administration, previous to the Trump administration, right? And then how the establishment in Washington, D.C., they tighten up together and they work together to make sure that they stay in power. Doesn't make any difference what side of the political aisle they're on, to be honest with you. So anyway, how we can do this is, Ivan's right out here, and I can, again, there he is, yeah. So if you have a question, please come on up and ask the question. And I know it's hard to always ask the first question. Yeah, there you go. Turn those lights on. Beautiful. Yeah. Robin, there you go.
Can you hear me?
I sure can.
We've known each other 20 years, fought terror, and under the current situation that we're in, I don't know how I want to phrase this. How do you see our national security position right now in the world with we've been seeing what's going on?
Yeah, we are in a decline. We're in a rapid decline. And so the question is about what's the sort of posture of the United States national security. We are in a rapid decline, and other nation states are rising. China is the principal one. Now we can kind of kickstart ourselves back up by refocusing our military, by refocusing some of the domestic issues that we're dealing with right now, as everybody feels the pain of the illegal invasion that's going on, the rise of domestic violence in this country with things like the fentanyl crisis and other problems. I mean, I'm another part of my life, I'm involved in anti-child trafficking. Child sex trafficking and child slave trafficking is the #1 crime being committed in this country today, not drugs anymore. Drugs is like minor league compared to that. So we have a moral decline in this country, and that is part of our national security decline. People around the world clearly see it, but there are still many people in other parts of the world, like I was with some young leaders out of South America about 2 weeks ago, and they desperately want to see Donald Trump win the presidency because they see America as still that, as was said earlier tonight, still that shining city on the hill, right? That actually, when you talk about shining city on the hill or a city on the hill, that, you know, everybody remembers Reagan saying shiny city on a hill. It actually comes from Matthew, and comes right out of the Bible. So we have to remember what we chose as Americans, okay? You know, when you think about faith, you think about, you know, God really chose Israel. You know, that's sort of the biblical choice that was made. And this is all part of the same answer to your great question about this, you know, what's our posture globally? And when we are strong as a faith-based nation, and I'm not talking about Christian nationalists, all this stuff. I mean, yeah, I'm a Christian. If being a nationalist means that I love my country, I'm a nationalist, right? So I've been called every name in the book. If you have an ugly name, I've been called it publicly on the front page of every major newspaper in the world. And I could, you know, it actually is a badge of honor. So our nation is in a rapid decline, and if we don't get the right leader back in the White House, if we don't get Donald J. Trump back in the White House, you know, then all bets are off, folks. All bets are off. So if you're looking to have if you're looking to vote for your pastor to be the president, forget it. Okay? No, and I'll guarantee, like, I'm a Catholic, so priest, right? Nobody's perfect. And people have to get over this notion. And we have got to get strong, smart, disciplined leaders in the White House, and then, of course, sprinkled in other parts of our government, to grab hold of this thing we call the United States of America in order to get ourselves back up on the top of that world stage. And it doesn't mean to be the bully on the block at all. It means to be seen as this humble, God-fearing nation that is capable of taking care of itself first. That would be called America first. And then we can help out, you know, other parts of the world, right? I mean, I'm in the throes of helping a lot of people down in North Carolina and now Florida. And we've been doing this, going at this hard for about 2 weeks. You know, when there's a big old earthquake or some crazy, you know, Mother Nature event overseas, the Americans are there like in spades all the time. We're like in droves. We show up. We send people over. I mean, I've been on some of those, it's certainly from our military, but also I've seen a lot of first responders go overseas to help others. And not a lot of people knocking on our door right now. Okay? Not a lot of people knocking on our door. Because there's no door to knock on. Because the guy, Uncle Joe, is sound asleep. It's past 4 o'clock, right? So, anyway, that's Robin Gritz. Tremendous, extraordinary FBI agent. Thank you so much, Robin, for your service. And she's continuing her fight. And hopefully, when we get back into the White House, we can take that fight to the next level. So, thank you.
Yes, sir. You have a question about the movie?
I have a question for General.
It's okay.
First, General, thank you for your service and what you had to endure. Is there any chance that should the election go in a positive result, you would get your rank reinstated and sit at the head of a military tribunal to not only drain the swamp, but imprison the swamp, and on a few occasions, execute the swamp?
Here's where I think General Flynn would best serve in a Trump administration. So has everybody heard of Elon Musk and potentially being the head of the government efficiency task force that Donald Trump wants to create? So that's going to be probably one of the most important initiatives that Donald Trump has, and I can see General Flynn being in a position to essentially get in there and gut the intelligence community and gut the military-industrial complex. So, I mean, there's a lot of different answers to that question in terms of, you know, what position he could or should take, but I think what really needs to happen, I mean, we have to gut the federal government. I mean, I think I heard Vivek Ramaswamy, you know, in one interview talk about how we need to cut it by like 80%. I mean, if you have been into the DC area, okay, Washington, D.C. is pretty much, I mean, Northern Virginia is pretty much all of Washington, D.C. It's nothing but bureaucrats, and it's just a cesspool of government waste. All right, so that's my best response. I think he needs to team up with Elon Musk, RFK Jr. We need to get RFK Jr. to gut the the kind of the healthcare industrial complex, right? So those three right there. Let's top three individuals.
Yeah, and the only thing I would add is that your sentiment is like a lot of people that I speak to around this country, and for years now, for the last 4 years of my life, I've been around this country, you know, all over the country. I've been to over 100 cities just, you know, doing my thing, which is basically telling the American people, you better wake up here, folks. You know, there's no more, well, you know, we're going to go through just another election. All these elections are the same. But what your sentiment is about is accountability, okay? Accountability. And if there's anything that our founders taught us, they taught us two things. They taught us how to be courageous, because they were willing to give up everything to include their lives. And they also taught us about accountability, because they took account for themselves first and foremost. They were willing to say, you know, we hold ourselves responsible, because they all said it. We hold ourselves responsible for the things that are about to happen. The people that we have serving in our government right now are not serving, they're serving themselves. And so we need accountability. I definitely believe we need accountability. You know, your question went into some other areas that I think a lot of people actually think like you do, and I think that's your right and our privilege. And Michael's right. I mean, there is a way to get after this, but we have to win first. Okay? I always tell people that I'm an athlete. I grew up as an athlete. I played on a lot of sports. I played on a lot of championship teams. And championship teams win because they don't worry about playing, you know, we're in football season now, so they don't worry about, you know, playing in the Super Bowl this Sunday or this Saturday. They worry about winning this Saturday or this Sunday. And they worry about winning that game. Win every single game. If you keep winning, you're going to get to the Super Bowl. And right now, what we have to do before all these other things that we want to do, before all these people that want a job in the government someplace, which I'm not looking for one, okay? But when people start thinking like that, all of us folks, and when you hear other people talking about it, you know, because you're going to hear a lot of people this weekend, you know, and I always say that I speak like I never will be invited back. Okay? So you're going to hear all kinds of stuff, and that's great, that's good. I mean, people need to feel that way, and all good, fine. But not me. I'm about winning. And we have to win. And these people are already up to no good. So we got to win first. We win, and then Katie bar the door. Okay? Believe me, the gates of hell, my hell, will be unleashed.
Sir. Go ahead.
General, it's an honor to talk to you. I've watched you on the news. It's amazing that you could actually get through a bureaucratic, a DC wood chipper and survive and come out even with your cape on. This is America. The people around here, small town America, we're offended and we're aggravated and we're furious that our government has turned on our heroes. And my question to you is, I have two questions. When you came above the water and you could catch your breath and you were swimming to shore, the analogy was well put. Who do you fear more? The people in DC in that deep state, or ISIS, or the people in foreign countries?
The former, the people in our government, okay? No, Abraham Lincoln, okay, and I'll give you a great quote from Abraham Lincoln that addresses precisely your question. When Abraham Lincoln was 28 years old, and it was in 1838, he gave a speech called the Lyceum Speech in Missouri. And he said that no foreign foe will take a drink from the Ohio or put a step on the Blue Ridge with a Napoleon Bonaparte for a commander. Never. Our death will be by our own suicide. Okay? He said that in 1838, well before the Civil War. 28-year-old. And he was, you know, and I've read that speech a bunch of times. It's actually a very good speech if you get a chance to look it up on the internet. Lyceum Speech by Abraham Lincoln. It's fascinating. So the most dangerous threat that we have is, I mean, to a degree, it's complacency, laziness on our part, figuring, you know, somebody else will do it, right? Somebody else will do it. Somebody else will take responsibility and go do it. Let them do it. Let the politicians do it. That's dangerous. But this, you know, and I'm not a big fan of this word, but it's the right word. This insidiousness inside of our government right now. And I think what we've all seen, especially with what's going on with Trump, I mean, what we've seen is how far down this thing goes. Okay? This deep level of corruption in our government. How far down it goes. It's not just, you know, a sprinkled few in the Senate or the House or the White House, you know, or some of these departments or in the judiciary. It goes down pretty deep. And so that's the foe that I fear. It has this sort of chokehold on our nation right now. No enemy overseas. Trust me. I mean, you guys know this up here in Pennsylvania. You know, nobody's about to attack this country because they know they get their asses kicked. Okay? Now, because if they did, you know, believe me, then you would see the American people want to have a unifying force of Americans behind saving this country. But what we need right now is we need that unifying force behind, in this case, one man who they've already tried to kill a couple of times, you know, not too far from here. Had he not, you know, I mean, he just had 100,000 people back in Butler that, you know, whatever, the 14th, I think, of July, you know, they tried to turn his head into red mist. Okay? And both of these individuals. And there's another threat out there. You following this other threat? For these handheld shoulder-fired missiles from Iran, MiSAG 3 they're called. It's a real threat. You know, Trump is negotiating. Trump and his team are negotiating to get Air Force aircraft to support his, you know, his being able to campaign around the country. And people go, Air Force aircraft. Yeah, because Air Force aircraft provide close air support and support around his aircraft. And they're having the damnedest time. That should just be given to them. It shouldn't have to be a negotiation or even a conversation. So you know, ISIS, piece of cake. China, and I hope they're listening, piece of cake. Russia, piece of cake. Okay? And as you've probably heard Trump say, and I'll say it tonight, you know, the use of the word nuclear, if you paid very close attention to Trump, he talks about it once in a while. The word nuclear is very dangerous. It's very dangerous. And don't ever let anybody say that, well, we got tactical nukes that can be, you know, blown up just over here in the eastern front of Eastern Europe. There's no such thing as a tactical nuke. Okay? Look at what we did in Nagasaki and Hiroshima during World War II with atomic bombs. Okay? These tactical nukes are 25 times the tonnage of explosives than what we dropped in just those two cities. So nuclear is one little component that I get very, very worried about. And that's why we've got to have really smart people in charge. So, I mean, Uncle Joe Biden from right down the road here, right? Is he from where? He's from Scranton? I'm just picking on you, okay? I'm picking on you because when we flew in, it was like, oh, we're in Joe's pot, you know, this place, man, Scranton. I love it. This guy hasn't talked to Putin in 2 years. 2 years. Two of the largest nuclear holdings in the world, and they haven't communicated in over 2 years. So, anyway, sorry, went on that one. Yes, ma'am.
First of all, I want to say how beautiful your documentary was. Very well made. And for a lot of us, I think, patriots, we remember bits and pieces of living through it. And surely you connected the dots and we clearly understand what happened. Secondly, I just want to say that it's beautiful to see such a strong family of unity together, that you can go through hell and back with your wife, with your son, with your brother, your sister, and know that you did nothing wrong and no one abandons anyone. And that is an example to every American family here. So my question to you is this, because I think you probably get that asked a lot, but it's a really good question. The other thing we saw in this movie was President Trump. It was very clear that he didn't know exactly who to trust. We see those faces, and now we can point out exactly who they were and the ones that weren't good. So if he gets in, which we hope he does, and he needs good people he can trust, and you are asked to be in his administration, would you say yes, and at what capacity would you serve?
Yeah, I mean, is there media here? There's some media here. I want him to get this right.
No fake news.
Ivan and I talk about this. You've probably heard, if you follow Ivan, we talk about the Secretary of Accountability or the Secretary of Retribution. I'm kidding there, media. I'm kidding. Screw you. What my son Michael talked about earlier about this task force that Trump wants to create, which is a government efficiency. It's probably a soft way of saying we need to clean out, the gutters, and there has to be a reformation of the United States government. There has to be. We cannot continue down this road. I mean, it's undeniable. Everybody knows it. We can't continue down this road. So there's got to be a reformation inside the U.S. government, the federal level for sure. And then we'll leave it up to the states to take care of their own. But the federal government has to go through that, particularly the executive branch of the government. And I'm very familiar with how we're organized. You don't get to these levels that I got to and not know, but because you're right. And it's across the aisles. It's not just the Democrats over there. I mean, that's why, putting these, talking about these people that we spoke about in this movie, to this day, I always say this, I guess, and some, just reminded me, to this day, when Trump called me up about the pardon, when I finally took the pardon, I figured the very next call was going to be from Mike Pence, the vice president, to say, hey, Mike, we're so sorry for what you and your family went through. To this day, that man has never spoken to me. So, Mr. Faith, right? So I've never tried to wear my faith on my sleeve. I've certainly become closer to God in this as I've gone through all this, for sure. But I can, people like that, that bothers me a lot. It bothers me personally because, man of faith, never to this day has he, and he knows exactly what he did. And I've called him out in this movie. And I still figured that he would give me a call and go, oh, well, why'd you do that? Because I meant it. I meant it, okay? Not to be vindictive, not to be mean-spirited, but to be honest and truthful about what happened, okay? You don't call people out like I've called people out in this movie and not have the back, the proof, the evidence, the receipts, they call them, right? To be able to say things like I've said. So why we must get, that's why I said in the movie, the country didn't want these politicians anymore. What we need is leaders. We need leaders. And there's leaders in this room, there's leaders in these communities, there's leaders in this country. Now those leaders have to step up. And then Trump has done that. Look at what they've done to that man. Look at what they've done to his family. Okay? So, and they will continue to come after all of us if we don't stand and we don't, show what's possible, right? As Americans. So, thank you for asking that question. Thank you, ma'am.
Just thank you for being here. I'm very grateful that I could hear your story in full, and it was very heartfelt, and I'm just grateful that God sent you here and that God is with the American people and that this country was founded for God, to search for God. And I just really appreciate you and your family, and But my question is about the media, actually. What news sources would you recommend or say that are trustworthy? Would you say Alex Jones, or like who do you believe?
Roseanne Barr. She's my girlfriend. We just did an interview with her. Ivan did one too. I'm a big fan of Alex. I was talking with Ivan earlier. Been listening to Alex for the better part of a couple of decades. I mean, there's a lot of good, solid voices out there. Jack Posobiec, Charlie Kirk, Patriot.tv. I have a show on Patriot.tv that I try to do once a week. But Patriot.tv has like Sam Sorbo and Joe Pags. He's great. Does a 3-hour show every day. What other ones?
How many in this room use the platform X? Raise your hand.
X.
Okay. I mean, since Elon took it over. Did you use it before Elon took it over? No?
Yeah, not that many. The hands went up, so that's interesting. It's probably one of the best sources of news on the planet.
It's just it's a great platform to follow people, not necessarily organizations. I mean, I will tell you that I cannot stand. I mean, obviously, I think everybody in this room can't stand, media sources like CNN and MSNBC, but I'm not a fan of Fox News either. I mean, they're just, to me, they fit into the fake news legacy, Mockingbird, media that, just like these other ones. They're, it's 1 or 2 quick minute, hits, and you don't really get anything. That's why like long, podcast formats are really popular right now. So I would suggest, I guess from my generation standpoint, to get on X and follow a couple of good accounts. I mean, especially when it comes to, anything, to do with, the election coming up. So, and there's, I mean, just ask one of us to, give you a couple of names to follow. We'll give you a couple of names for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of Dan Bongino and a good friend of Dan. Yeah, he's another one. I mean, obviously Tucker's out there with his voice. I mean, there's some others. I mean, you got to kind of, I'm sort of one, information's my world. So I look around the whole gamut, and I do listen to some of the opposition voices out there in the cable news world and in the corporate media. Corporate media is the big 3, ABC, NBC, and CBS. And then you have the cable. Some of them are owned by the corporate, but I do listen to them because I want to know what they're thinking. Okay, because I've always, and I'm a guy who's fought a lot of enemies, of America, and I've always said if I can think it, they can think it, and there probably are. And when they telegraph what they're going to do, you're better off paying attention and then trying to come up with ways that you can defeat it. So it's not I don't just listen to one side of the aisle, so to speak, right? In order to find truth, you have to really dig. You got to dig, and it takes a lot of research and then your own discernment, right? Discernment, not so much judgment, right? But discernment. It's different. It's a different word.
If I could just add real quick, sir. My litmus test is if a media distribution company has censored, they've already automatically lost my trust, right? So whether it's criminal news network, faux news, Insta garbage, fake book, commie search, commie tube, right? So then it begs the question, where do you go? Rumble, X, there's others, Substack. And I'll close with this, is that if there are still content creators that you think, oh my gosh, they're telling the truth, but they're still and have never been censored on CommieTube, I'm immediately skeptical, right? So be very cautious about those, because they could be yet another op. I'm not saying they are. Be very deliberate on who you're going to trust.
Yeah, and just real quick on Ivan, just for those that don't know Ivan, Ivan's a retired lieutenant colonel out of the United States Army, Green Beret, Special Forces guy, amazing career, speaks multiple languages. He's also a constitutional lawyer. So you're not listening to just some guy that's just some guy.
Thank you.
Well, actually, I'm a subscriber to Ivan's podcast recently, just saying. And I watched the Skiff, General Flynn in the Skiff, and that movie was amazing. I'm just so excited. It's the second time I've seen it. I got even more out of it this time. Also X-22 report is great as an overview. I watch every day if I can. And we know LT, so good. Anyway, my question is actually personal. I think the father-son relationship is probably the most, including our Heavenly Father with us, most important relationship in the world. And so it's a personal question to Michael. Did I say that right? Michael or Micah? Michael.
Michael.
Right. I was so moved that you had the PTSD, as you said. And how are you doing now? It's a personal question. You don't have to answer, but I just want to make sure you're doing okay.
Oh, he's crushing it.
Wow,
I can say personally.
No, I appreciate the question. Certainly time does heal a little bit. I guess having new relationships and meeting people who have dealt with similar circumstances, and I don't know if you've ever heard of the term trauma bonding, but it's something that I definitely believe in. Those that have gone through similar things, but I would say I'm definitely better today than I was a couple of years ago. But there's certain things that that come up, that I see that that bring up those memories. Certainly, when I watch this movie, this movie does help in some ways for me to move past certain things, but it also motivates me to come, and do these kinds of things and talk to folks and try to and try to just motivate them to actually be okay with talking about those taboo, quote unquote, subjects that I mentioned in the movie, suicide, depression, PTSD, because the mental health crisis in this country is something that doesn't ever get talked about. I think everybody in here would agree with that, and it's something that we have to address, and that's why frankly I'm a big fan of RFK Jr. and wanting to get in and really revamp the the healthcare industry. So let's hope that he does that.
Thank you, ma'am. Sir?
Mr. Flynn and General Flynn, it's an honor. My name is Cooch. I'm a retired police officer in the Bronx. I worked in the music industry for many years, touring the world with rock star friends, but they've all become an embarrassment because they've been owned by the cabal and they've turned on President Trump. What I think is you are all the new rock stars that the kids should be looking up to, including Mr. Reagan, Alex Jones, Tucker Carlson, Scott Pressler, who I work with. You're all giving us a lot of hope, and I think the kids could look up to you all rather than these rock stars who are phony and owned by the cabal.
So true. It's a big deal. I'm a big fan of Scott Pressler, by the way. Scott could not be here tonight. We invited him. I think he's got a couple of his folks here that are trying to register people. Yeah. And anyway, but Scott is a great person, great friend, and he's out. I know he's in the western side of the state tonight doing God's work.
Good evening, General Flynn. Appreciate it for an old vet that's getting old and a little too wide. Anyway, I didn't think I'd be so emotional. Sorry. Give me a minute.
Take a deep breath, please, and just take your time. All right.
Anyway, in history, love Lincoln, and I love one of the things he once said. He said, he had a very divided cabinet, a very divided country, in a very difficult time. And he went through things and suffered a lot of depression. And one time, after Lee surrendered and the South surrendered formally, all his cabinet and all his advisors were wanting to take retribution on the South. and one of them said they're their enemies, and his comment to his cabinet was, well, if I make my enemies my friend, have I not defeated my enemies? And it reminds me of where from the Bible it says, vengeance is mine, thus saith the Lord. And I was in Eastern Tennessee just last week and listening to the people in Greene County there and stuff on the ham radios and all they're going through in North Carolina. And here, and I know how abused and how wronged the innocent people of this country have been, and you're one of them. And all of us are in those long, dark nights when we feel there's no one there. So my question to you, quite simply, and to your son, is could you just tell us a little bit, because each of us are in our own little foxhole somewhere, and sometimes we lose the friend next to us and we feel all alone when we're fighting these battles, whether it's our local, state, nation. But what advice could you give us that are sitting there in the foxholes that have been there for many years? And I appreciate it. Thank you.
Wow. You know, my big message to the American people is that you're not alone. Okay? I mean, even in a tent like tonight, you know, with all of us sitting here, and you're here maybe with a friend, a relative, or family member. And but let me tell you, there are millions and millions and millions of Americans, and you know, and we're all together in this. So many people feel exactly like we all feel right now, and like I said earlier, this feeling is an undeniable. We cannot put our heads in the sand and go, well, this is going to be okay because we'll have an election and we'll overcome this. No, not this time. In the long arc of history, okay, in the long arc of history, good always prevails over evil. Throughout history, from the time of the first empire that was ever written about, which is the Byzantine Empire, all the way to now, right, which is essentially the American Empire. This is the time that we, you know, are still sort of, you know, that sort of city on the hill. We're not necessarily shining. During this arc of history, this moment that we are in right now, during this arc, we're not in charge. Like during the Civil War, Abraham Lincoln was in charge. During the Revolutionary War, George Washington was in charge. During this moment, this war that we're in, it is a war. You know, a friend of mine was, you know, they're bashing him right now. In the last 24 hours, he's a pastor, Lance Wallnau. Great guy. They're beating him up they're just beating the crap out of him in the mainstream media because he talks about us being a spiritual war. And so the mainstream media is going crazy on him right now, for anybody that knows or has heard about Lance Wallnau. And so I say that because another woman there earlier talked about faith and talked about, you know, how God is, you know, we are the ones that came here to this nation, and we brought God with us to America. And we created this thing called the United States of America. And during this moment in time, during this particular arc of history, who's in charge? God is in charge. Okay? And I will tell you, folks, my name's not Michael for just because. When I hear people say, well, God wins, everything will be okay because God wins. Okay? Now, God is the judge, not me, not any of us. every great leader throughout history, certainly throughout U.S. history, would get on their knees and they would pray before battle. Okay? But then they would stand and they would go do something. Okay? And the way that I talk about it today is that, you know, we're all kind of like sitting in the bleachers right now. And we're watching this game, which is not a game, happen in front of our eyes. And you got to get out of the bleachers. We got, whatever, 25 days. So if you're on the field there and you're in this audience tonight, great. I applaud you for being on the field and leaving it all on the field. Every drop of sweat. Americans cannot sit in the bleachers any longer. And, you know, when Trump wins, that's when the really hard work is going to begin. We haven't seen or felt sacrifice in this country in a long time. A long time. So I want you to know that, you know, I love you. Life, right? Every life is precious. But now's the time to stand. Step up and speak up. And be fearless. Be fearless about who you are as an American, as a patriot, as a Christian, or whatever you are. If you love this country, you know, we've got 25 more days to get out there and do more. Whatever it is. Speak out more. Talk more to neighbors. Go to community meetings. Go to your church. You know, if you're a pastor in this country, no pastor can preach the Bible from a pulpit like that without something called the Constitution. Doesn't happen anywhere else on the planet. So, not enough pastors. And we're going to be with a whole bunch of them here in another week. A bunch that represent tens of millions of evangelicals. And we'll be on the 21st of this month with Trump in Charlotte. To sit there and go, okay, folks, now's the time. Because if we go in another direction, those pulpits go away. They go away. Because they don't want God. These are dark, soulless people. And you need to understand that. Because that's what communism is. That's what Marxism is. And we will become the United Socialist States of America if we don't wake up in this country. Okay? And I mean that. I mean that. I mean, believe me or not, doesn't matter. But I have enough scar tissue, and I have been all over this planet and dealt with some of the worst of our enemies. And as I gave a lousy answer before, the greatest enemy that I have fought is right here at home. And it's evil. It's evil. It's not a Democrat or an establishment or a bureaucrat. It's evil. And now is our time to stand up against this evil. So God bless you, sir, for having the courage to ask that question. Thank you.
Thank you, General. And one of the report.
General, I'd like to say that your whole family's service and dedication to the truth in the country has been really inspiring. I wish I had followed it closer. Almost embarrassed doing that. I have a couple real quick questions. Number one, aside from the books that you've written, you're obviously very well read. What are your favorite books? One or two titles? And number two, why wasn't Reagan so persecuted for Make America Great Again, as Trump was? And number three, you were in the protection business. You can argue, why was the sniper on the roof? Whose responsibility was it? My question is, why was Trump allowed to come out to speak, and why haven't we heard about who made that decision to let him come out and speak?
Well, So I'll go backwards here if I can. I used to think that the Secret Service was like a real high quality organization, but the culture inside of that organization is clearly needs to be cleaned up. I mean, it definitely does. Any organization that this DEI stuff has touched has permeated down to a level where there's just not this openness that needs to happen, and that whole investigation, you know, the American people need to know. Trump certainly, he does, and that's why they're demanding more and more security support for him. You know, I'm not sure Reagan had "Make America Great Again." Reagan was America first, but for folks here, America first has been, that phrase, that bumper sticker, America first, has been around since post-World War I. So it sort of was first coined post-World War I because it was America first. We had won the Great War, that's what it was called. World War I didn't happen, didn't get its name until we had World War II. So it was called the Great War, and it was going to be the war that ended all wars, and America was going to, you know, America first. And that's kind of where that phrase came from. I'm not aware that Reagan had a "Make America Great Again" slogan. And I'll forget what his slogan were or was, but I know that Trump is a different type of leader. Definitely is a different type of leader. He's all about, you know, a mission, the objectives to accomplish the mission, and let's get that done. And like I said at the very end of the movie, he didn't know the ways of Washington. Now he does. You know, now he does, and he's fighting for all of us. He's fighting tooth and nail. I mean, these people wanted to kill him. You know, just like they killed Lincoln. So, you know, as far as books go, I mean, you know, my favorite is one of the ones I wrote, which is the Introduction to Fifth Generation Warfare, 5GW. And if you haven't read that book, you should read it. Introduction to 5GW, Introduction to Fifth Generation Warfare. It's called The Citizen's Guide to Fifth Generation Warfare. And if you read it, you'll understand exactly what we're going through. And it's the first in a 3-part series. The second part was how to fight artificial intelligence. And the third part is the role of the church. And if you get a chance to read through them, those are, you know, the first one is really the foundation of what we are involved in right now. And it gives a lot of solutions about how to overcome it, how to get through this. Because this is a war, whether people want to, you know, you use the word war, the media goes, oh, he's trying to do this, he's trying to do that. You know, it's all bullshit, right? I mean, it really is. I mean, it's a war. And we feel it. I believe it's a spiritual war more than anything else, but it's certainly intellectual, physical, and emotional. I mean, we all have, I got a large family, my wife has a large family, we have, you know, a tribe of people. I got close to 100 nieces and nephews and grandkids, and just unbelievable, you know. And believe me, within a large body of people like that, you know, we're going to have our arguments and our debates about, you know, about this or that, about what we believe or what we don't believe, you know. But our focus should always be on this country, right? And moving this country forward as a constitutional republic. When they use this phrase, he's a danger to democracy, they don't want to say he's a danger to the constitutional republic, because he's not. He's trying to preserve the damn thing. Okay? They're the danger to what we have. So they use words to their, you know, to their advantage, and we've got to understand that. And that's what fifth generation warfare is about. Yes, sir.
So the next question is from somebody that I respect very highly for speaking truth to power, just like you, sir. Lieutenant Colonel Stu Scheller. Thank you. So just a general note, I didn't know General Flynn. I got to meet him 2 years ago. And the one thing I told your assistant earlier tonight, sir, is how kind you were. And I was going through a lot. My whole life had been upended, and you told me to never underestimate the compassion of the American people. And that stuck with me. And I can't tell you how emotional this movie was watching it.
some of the things that I had been through, some of the things the American people did for me. And even when I was going through it, all I wanted to do was serve my country, just be a good infantry officer, expect honesty and accountability from my senior military leaders. And I never got that, and I did end up in jail, solitary confinement for 9 days. And I was mad at the whole system. So by the time I went to jail, I was mad at everyone. I was mad at every sitting president. I was mad at President Trump. I was mad at yourself. And it's really taken me coming through the backside to kind of see who's fighting for us. So this is more of a statement. I just want to say thank you for everything you've done. That movie meant a lot to me. And I just appreciate you still being out here and fighting. So that's a thank you. Again, thank you both. So, my question is this, and I've thought deeply about this. Why is the military weak? We have the best young talents, in my opinion. We have $1 trillion annual budget. We have the best facilities in the world. The problem is we have weak leadership. And this is my diagnosis of it. If I'm an infantry officer, which I was, and I had 4 subordinates, 1, 2, 3, 4, theoretically, I rank them the best, 1 through 4 in terms of infantry officers. But what happens is I say, hey, you were the best, but you kept talking up in the meeting. And we've talked about this. So you're going to be number 2, you're going to be number 1, you're going to be number 3, and you're going to be number 4. And so what any smart person realizes is they don't have to be the best at their job. They just have to be the best at getting their boss, to think they're the best. And so what happens is a 4-star general over 40 years is literally the guy that has made his boss like him the most. And I see that problem across government ad nauseum. You're getting your boss to like you, and you're not necessarily being a performer. You're not necessarily telling the truth. In fact, telling the truth can be a bad thing in a lot of respects. And so if there is a panel of accountability, that's great. It's good to say. But my assessment of it is you need to figure out how to get performers to be set apart. Rather than just saying, you're not good at your job, that's fine, but if you can't get someone to rise to the top by being the best performer, then we continue to have the same problems. Carter Ham, a 4-star general, watches Americans fight 1v1000, has 7 military options to respond, and he doesn't. General McKenzie, the list goes on and on. So my question is, how can we implement a system of performance to ensure that we get performers to rise to the top? Thank you.
Wow. So, our nations, and our military, not their military, right, or the government's military, or the president's military, our military is designed for one purpose, okay? And don't ever forget this. Our uniformed military is designed for one purpose, and that purpose is to be prepared to fight and win, and the key word there is win, our nation's wars, period. That's it. That's the purpose. Not to, get into transgender socialism, not to participate in endless wars, okay? A lot of veterans, there's a lot of veterans in here tonight. I met a bunch of you, and I meet veterans all the time. The last war that we won was World War II. Okay? And my father fought in World War II. I had a grandfather and my father fought in World War II. And both my grandfathers fought in World War I. My father also fought in the Korean War. I have a brother that served in the Vietnam era. My son, Michael's brother, serves today. Served 3 tours in Afghanistan. I have a brother who is also a general, a 4-star, commanding all Army forces out in the Pacific right now. So our nation has to reorient our military. That means leadership to win. Right? There's no, there's just nothing else in war. Not participating in endless, sadly, tragically wasting lives. A mother or father doesn't want to think that their child went off to war, and then all of a sudden, look at the messes we've left, right? Just Afghanistan is the most distasteful thing, right? I mean, nobody wants to think that my child's going off to the military and their lives are going to be wasted in some war that we don't even understand what the purpose is. But that's what we have allowed ourselves to do. And then yes, so the senior leaders, you know, and you know, the most of the senior leaders have just allowed it. You just sort of like, okay, we'll just keep going. We'll just keep, you know, we'll get another promotion. You get to, you know, you got to get through it. We can't do that anymore. We can't afford to do it. We can't afford economically to do it. Like I said in that movie, we spent more money in Afghanistan, a losing effort that we retreated under fire and left American citizens and soldiers behind enemy lines. We spent more money in that war than we did to rebuild all of Europe after World War II. It was called a Marshall Plan. I mean, think about that. I mean, the number is like, you know, they say it's over 6 trillion. It's probably closer to 10 trillion. I mean, that kind of number goes right over most Americans' heads. Like, trillion? Shit, I ain't got $1,000 in the bank if I had an emergency tonight. So we have to reorient our military, and I mean like immediately, to focus on being a championship team and winning, and focusing on being well-trained, prepared, mentally tough, physically fit. I mean, I see it, believe me, I see it. I watch it closely. And there's a lot of reckoning that needs to happen inside of our military. And they know it. The rank and file is ready for it. The rank and file is ready for it. That's why people join the military. They don't join the military to be losers. They join the military, and most of them don't realize it, but they sign on that dotted line to give their very life for this country. That's the importance of a leader in the military understanding that. That those young men, and primarily men, but young men and women are willing to give their lives for this country. So they better be the best at what they're going to do, and they better be focused on winning. Winning. Warfare, there's no second chances, right? So that's kind of my attitude about it. So, you know, we need to get back to that. We've got to get back. We can get back to that. We can definitely get back to that, but it's got to be the right leadership. Yes, sir.
Thank you, General Flynn. Appreciate it.
I'm going to do one more after this, Ivan, because I know I'm trying to watch the time here for these folks.
First of all, let me just say that I lived through the entire thing when you were accused. I never believed a word of it. When they said treason, when they said traitor, I said no. No. Because the accusation doesn't match the walk. President Reagan said, I've had it up to my keister. That was his byline. Please give my thanks to your family, each and every one. As I watched the film tonight, it reminded me that the power of an intact family stood up to the power of the deep state and was undefeated. Our God instituted the family, and no power wrought by the devil can overcome it. My question for you, sir. We have seen over the course of the last 4 years, clearly, Joe Biden is not running the country, nor is he capable of running the country. He is a senile old man and should be retired. Somebody's pulling the strings, and he many times has even said, I better not say anything, I'll get in trouble. He has said the quiet part out loud too many times. We have now been exposed to the campaign of Kamala Harris. And it is clear that she does not have the mental acuity to lead the nation, yet she's part of the Biden-Harris team. General Flynn, my question for you is, who's running the country?
Barack Obama.
I'll take that answer.
I mean, there's others, but he's right there. I mean, he said it. He said it. He said it. And I'd like to just sit in my basement, with a little earpiece in my ear, and without all the nonsense that I got to deal with as president, and just kind of have my third term. This country has been undermined by a group of socialist Marxists. Okay? Most people in this room, and certainly most people in the country, have never heard of something called the Democratic Socialist Party of America. Not the Communist Party of America. They changed their name. Right? The Communist Party of America is still around. Been around since probably 1918, 1919. Got the name of Trotsky, stood it up. Till Stalin had him killed. It morphed into the Democratic Socialist Party of America in the late 60s. And here we are. They took their time, they've met all their goals, and here we are. So, who's running the country? Barack Obama. I mean, it ain't Joe Biden, it's not Kamala Harris. There is a group of people. There is kind of a, they call themselves kind of a community within the government, but some of them are outside the government too. So this is very, very interesting times that we're in. And we've got to get this country back. We've got to get, like Trump has said a bunch of times about the vote, in the election. It's got to be too big to rig. Average turnout since 1992 for presidential elections, average turnout has been 65% during the general election for President of the United States since 1992. 65%. That's a D. That's like a D minus, right? That means 35% of people who are registered in this country that can vote don't. In 2020, between 30, roughly, they say 40 million, but I'll say between 30 and 40 million Christians did not vote in 2020. Christians did not vote. So, when I say get out of the bleachers, maybe that's all that means, is get out there and vote. But don't sit there and go, I'm gonna just be a complainer all my life and complain about this and complain about that. There's one thing that our founders gave us that makes all of us equal at the exact same moment in time in this country, is our right to vote. I don't care if it's a homeless veteran, which we have too many of, but he's registered to vote and he's living out on the street and he goes to vote. And the richest guy in that town goes to vote at that same moment. Those two are supposed to be equal. That's the beauty of our vote in this country, and it always has been, until we started to see this undermining of our system, of our election system and our election integrity. Now the Department of Justice will come after me. Trust me, they'll come after me because I said something like that, because they'll go, Flynn's spewing misinformation. That's total bullshit. This ain't misinformation. The mail-in ballots, mail-in ballots are not constitutional. Not constitutional. For damn sure, having the U.S. postal system that we pay for, that's not constitutional. An executive branch, an executive agency inside of the executive branch of the United States government cannot be involved in election system. It is unconstitutional. One of these days, we'll finally get that to the Supreme Court and they'll make that decision. We haven't gotten there yet. Because every time we turn to do something, there's legions of these evil bastard lawyers who come down and they swoop in, and then the Department of Justice is right there with them, issuing subpoenas, issuing warrants for arrest, and indictments against lawyers. Not just against guys like me, but against the lawyers. I mean, they bankrupted Rudy Giuliani, Sidney Powell. I mean, one of the top constitutional lawyers in this country, John Eastman, he's probably going to lose his law license out in California, and they've got him indicted in some case in Texas right now. I mean, this is not normal. Not normal. So we've got to be too big to rig. We have got to show up like 80, 95%. And people have got to get out and vote.
Last question, sir.
Well, I want to say, coming from Florida myself, I've been through quite a few of those storms, and we got to say thank you to your wife, especially for letting her have you come here to be with us.
She texted me and said our water stopped again. That came on for like 10 minutes. It's unbelievable. Yeah, she's tough as nails.
Anyways, I see her, like Lincoln, he had a war going on between, and I hear murmurs that, like, both sides, Democrat and Republic, they feel like there's going to be another civil war. Now they make movies about it, and people are out there speaking about it. As an intel, what do you see that's really happening? Who's making this happen?
Yeah, I think that there's definitely, I mean, that movie, Civil War, that was talked about, you just mentioned. It's fascinating. You know, I watched a little bit of it. I couldn't take it. There is certainly a huge divide in this country. They make it as though there's like two competing sides. And it's really not. So the influence campaign, like I said about Sun Tzu and all war is deception. If you haven't, a really, really great movie to watch, a documentary, it's 1 hour. It's called Into the Light. Into the Light. Into the Light. It's a great documentary, and it talks about the Hollywood intel community and media manipulation of large segments of our society. So there's actually a very small group of people, they just happen to be in charge, and they tell the rest of us that, oh, there's half the country's over here and half the country's over there. That's not true. It's not true. Okay? The majority of Americans want to continue to have, freedom to practice whatever their religions are, freedom to get out there and speak freely. They don't want, most Americans don't want government intrusion into their lives. And you see all these little activist groups pop up, right? Like all this stuff going on in Israel right now, in the Middle East, right? So you see all these college campuses where these Palestinian protests pop up. And we know that there's a lot of these same groups go around and they do these things. So what we're facing is actually a small group. But what we're facing intellectually is something that, like, most people go, oh my God, the country, we're divided in two. We're not. This is not like the Civil War. Who's in charge? No, don't forget this. Who's in charge? God is in charge. What does God want us to do? God wants us to stand on our ground. He wants us to stand on 2 feet. And He wants us to do what we do best, which is speak out, right? I mean, when you read the Bible and you look at the story of Jesus, I mean, today they'd be calling him a modern-day domestic terrorist, right? So talk about persecution and vengeance is mine, as that one gentleman that was up here earlier said. It is. I mean, my father taught us, do unto others like they would have, them do unto you. The golden rule, right? Like, treat others like you like to be treated. And that's what we ought to do. It's not so much about turning your cheek or something. I mean, at a certain point in time, you got to stand up there and fight back. But how do we do it? We do it in this country. We do it in this country by using the rule of law. Right? That's how. Everybody wants to hear something different. Not me. I understand the rule of law. I understand our Constitution. I understand the history of this country. And I understand what good, solid, sound, smart leadership can do. And I pray. And I pray. But when I'm done praying, I'm here on, on this stage tonight in this beautiful location here in this great state of Pennsylvania. So I just want to say to all of you, thank you for hanging in there. Thank you for watching this movie. God bless you all. And God bless America. Thank you.
Testing. Okay, good. Guys, it's not over. If you guys could just give us a few more minutes. Real quick, we talk about persecution. And, we have Lieutenant Stu Scheller here, General Flynn. We have the J6ers. One of the things I work closely with Todd, who's outside, we have Trump honey in a bottle. If you guys want to stop by and get a bottle, we donate a portion of this to Stand in the Gap. Stand in the Gap is an organization that Sarah McAfee founded. Her husband is the J6 sheriff. He's still in prison. What we're doing is this money that is raised is going to help build tiny houses in Tennessee, in Texas, to help the J6ers as they come out get reoriented. So it can add up.